August 10, 2019. Metropolitan Correctional Center, Manhattan. In cell 8, south, a lifeless body hangs suspended. Jeffrey Edward Epstein, the billionaire who once rubbed shoulders with presidents, who once ruled his private island like a king, now nothing more than a soulless corpse in orange prison garb. But this is not the end of the story. This is only when the real drama begins. This is the Boeing 727 that the press dubbed the Lolita Express, Epstein's private jet. It once carried the most powerful passengers on the planet: Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, Prince Andrew. Names that sent shivers down the world's spine when they appeared in Epstein's flight logs. Not only did he own the aircraft, Epstein also possessed a paradise of depravity in the middle of the Caribbean Sea. Little St. James Island. People called it Pedophile Island, where the darkest secrets were once hidden beneath the crystal-clear blue waters. Behind that luxurious facade lay horrifying accusations of debauched parties and unforgivable crimes. And hundreds of newspapers around the world, from New York to London, from Paris to Tokyo, all screaming the same question: did Epstein hold too many secrets about powerful people, and was that why he had to die to be silenced? Jeffrey Epstein was not just a sex offender. He was the architect of the most powerful blackmail network in modern history. He was the spider sitting at the center of a dark web, connecting global politics, finance, and entertainment. For over 2 decades, he turned 14, 15, 16-year-old girls into weapons. The abused children were not just victims, they were living evidence. Hidden cameras, secret bullets aimed at the hearts of the world's most powerful people. And then, precisely at the moment when he could have revealed everything, 2 security cameras simultaneously malfunctioned. 2 guards simultaneously fell asleep. Jeffrey Epstein simultaneously committed suicide by hanging himself from his bunk bed. Coincidence? Or a play directed with exquisite precision? This is the Jeffrey Epstein story. This is the story about the truth they don't want you to know. The journey begins in Brooklyn, 1953, where an ordinary child was about to become the monster that would make the entire world tremble with fear. Jeffrey Edward Epstein was born in 1953 in the bone-chilling cold of Brooklyn, a poor neighborhood where blackened brick houses crowded together like stacked coffins. Born into an ordinary middle-class family, his father worked as a groundskeeper for the city parks department, his mother as a school employee. No one could have imagined that this child would become one of the most powerful and criminal figures on the planet. Even as a child, Epstein's eyes were disturbingly different. Epstein was unusually intelligent, particularly gifted in mathematics, but this sharpness was not tied to an academic path. The mathematical numbers in his head weren't just calculations, they were meticulously calculated schemes, step by step, weaving a web of crime and manipulation. He dropped out of Cooper Union, then dropped out of New York University. Instead of accepting failure, he chose a different path, abandoning the dry academic route to dive into the real world, becoming a math tutor for the children of wealthy Manhattan families, where he could indulge his true nature. This was the first turning point in Jeffrey Epstein's life. Teaching brought him into luxurious penthouses where he learned to behave like the upper class, learned the body language of power, learned how to smile correctly in front of influential faces. During tutoring sessions, he didn't just impart mathematical knowledge, but also observed and noted every detail about how the elite operated. Each lesson was reconnaissance, each casual conversation a puzzle piece in the overall picture of how to infiltrate the power class. In 1976, with an introduction from one of his student families, Epstein joined Bear Stearns, one of Wall Street's most prestigious investment banks. No college degree, no financial experience, but he possessed something more dangerous: the ability to manipulate human psychology with absolute precision. At Bear Stearns, he was like a sponge absorbing knowledge. He learned how markets operated, understood the flow of massive funds, and most importantly, he learned how to turn information into a weapon. But Bear Stearns was just school. Epstein had much greater ambitions. After several years, he left Bear Stearns and established his own company called J. Epstein and Company. Leaving Bear Stearns to found J. Epstein and Company wasn't ordinary business. It was building a demonic fortress. The declaration of only serving clients with assets over $1 billion wasn't a marketing gimmick, but a sophisticated trap. He knew that billionaires didn't just crave money, they thirsted for exclusivity, the feeling of being specially chosen. Epstein created a closed financial club where only the super rich could enter. Leslie Wexner, the billionaire founder of L Brands empire, father of Victoria's Secret, was the first fat prey to fall into the web. From the late 1980s, Wexner gave Epstein control over nearly all of his personal assets. This wasn't just a business relationship, this was absolute delegation of power. Wexner even gifted Epstein a $77 million Manhattan mansion, the largest house in the city. With Wexner's backing, Epstein was no longer an ordinary asset manager. He became an insider of the super rich with access to this class's deepest secrets. From that solid foundation, Epstein built a glittering facade. Each property Epstein owned wasn't simply an asset, they were temples of sin, places where dark rituals occurred. He owned a 71-room mansion in Manhattan, once the largest house in New York City. He bought Little Saint, James Island in the Virgin Islands, a 78-acre tropical paradise with private beaches and complete isolation. He had a vast ranch in New Mexico, a luxurious mansion in Palm Beach, and a penthouse in Paris. But his most powerful symbol was the Boeing 727, the private jet later dubbed Lolita Express by the press. His facade wasn't just real estate. Epstein understood that in the world of power, personal relationships were more valuable than gold. He befriended Bill Clinton, the former US president who flew on the Lolita Express at least 26 times, so frequently that the flight logs became undeniable evidence. He was close to Donald Trump, who said in 2002, "Epstein is a terrific guy, he likes beautiful women on the younger side." He knew Prince Andrew so well that the British royal family had to publicly cut all ties after the scandal. He had connections with Ehud Barak, former Israeli Prime Minister, and dozens of other politicians, billionaires, and celebrities worldwide. Parallel to building his power network, Epstein created a perfect public image. He funded scientific research, particularly projects on artificial intelligence and molecular biology. He organized conferences featuring the world's leading scientists, creating the impression of a visionary billionaire concerned with human knowledge. He established charitable foundations, supported educational programs, and appeared at social events as a refined gentleman. Media praised him as a visionary philanthropist, an intellectual billionaire, a friend of science. But behind that perfect mask, Jeffrey Epstein was operating a complex and brutal criminal organization. While the world admired him through glamorous magazine photos, while politicians proudly posed beside him behind those luxurious doors, young girls were deceived and lost their freedom. Elite parties concealed horrific crimes. Flights on the Lolita Express weren't for vacation, but for transporting victims. Little St. James Island wasn't paradise, but hell on earth. In the world's eyes, Jeffrey Epstein embodied the American dream, a poor Brooklyn boy who rose to billionaire status through talent and effort. But in the eyes of surviving victims, he was the most horrific nightmare, a cold predator who knew how to use the light of fame to hide the darkness of crime. And the most terrifying thing wasn't what he had done, but that he could do it for 2 decades, without anyone being able to stop him. Because Jeffrey Epstein didn't just buy silence, he had bought an entire system of power. Behind the pristine white walls of the El Brillo Way mansion, a criminal system had been operating for years. Jeffrey Epstein had transformed his Palm Beach estate into the heart of a criminal operation targeting vulnerable minors. According to Palm Beach police reports, dozens of victims were identified, many of them teenage girls. They were lured to the mansion with promises of high-paying massage work. Once victims had been groomed, they were transferred to New York City, where the Fifth Avenue mansion waited like a secret fortress, the Manhattan Townhouse. The 7-story mansion at 9 East 71st Street, Manhattan, formerly owned by billionaire Leslie Wexner, became a luxurious and isolated maze. From the outside, it looked like an aristocratic mansion with tall windows and ornate iron gates, but inside it was a horrifying maze monitored by dozens of hidden cameras from living rooms to bathrooms. Every wall was filled with disturbing portraits of very young girls, their expressions marked by fear, vulnerability, and silent suffering.
When we searched in 2005, we found hundreds of photos organized by age. There were cameras installed in every corner of every room. He recorded everything, not for memories, but for control.
Michael Reiter, former Palm Beach police chief. This is where Epstein categorized his victims. Through selection processes, those who met the criteria would be transferred to the final destination, the Devil's Island. This 78-acre island was completely isolated in the open sea, with no way to escape except swimming through shark-infested waters with dangerous currents. The Boeing 727, nicknamed the Lolita Express, regularly brought VIP guests to the island. Teenage girls were invited with promises of scholarships, career opportunities, or simply luxurious vacations. No phones, no internet, no way to contact the outside world. They were taken directly to luxurious villas that were actually prisons with windows.
On the first day, I thought this was a vacation. The island was beautiful, the villa was luxurious. But when I asked when I could go home, they said I had to stay to work. They locked my room door every night. During the day, I was forced to, with Jeffrey and other men. When I refused, they beat me with a belt until I couldn't stand up.
Sarah Ransom said, "From these testimonies, the island earned its chilling name, Pedophile Island. On this island, Epstein had built a mysterious temple with golden domes and strange symbols. Locals called it the Devil's Temple. Inside, according to survivor testimonies, were underground rooms where unspeakable crimes were committed. From forcing victims to have relations with each other while being filmed, to brutal games with VIP guests.
There were times when our cries and pleas echoed across the island, but no one could hear except those participating. I tried to swim away from the island. The seawater was freezing cold, waves as tall as mountains. I thought I would drown, but at least escape this hell. They found me when I was about to sink and dragged me back.
Perhaps most horrifying was the journey to this hellish island, aboard the Boeing 727 that the press dubbed the Lolita Express. This wasn't just transportation, but a flying torture chamber soaring through the sky. Inside this luxurious aircraft were specially designed private compartments with real leather seats that converted to beds, adjustable mood lighting, and most importantly, complete soundproofing. Epstein and his guests exploited vulnerable minors right in the air, where no one could escape, no one could call for help, and every cry was swallowed by the roar of the airplane engines.
I was just a teenager when it happened. I'd never even experienced my first love. He stole my childhood, and with it, my ability to trust. Afterwards, he manipulated me into pulling others in. To survive, I became part of the cycle, and that reality still destroys me every single day.
If Epstein was the brain of this criminal organization, then Maxwell was its dark heart and evil soul. The daughter of media mogul Robert Maxwell, she had the elegant appearance of an upper-class lady with a seductive British accent and a smile always on her lips. But behind that graceful exterior was a predator more ruthless than Epstein himself, because she knew how to exploit the natural trust children have in women.
Ghislaine was the first person to approach me at school. She drove a luxurious Mercedes, wore designer clothes, spoke very gently. She asked about my family, about my studies. She said she could help me get a scholarship, could change my life. I trusted her because she was a woman.
Maxwell didn't just recruit victims she directly participated in, training and abusing them. She taught girls how to massage Epstein, which was actually teaching them to accept being violated.
Ghislaine didn't just watch me being raped by Jeffrey, she participated. She held my hands down when I tried to push Jeffrey away. She covered my mouth when I cried too loudly. And she took photos, filmed everything. She said this would help me learn to become a woman, help me become stronger. A woman helping a man rape me.
Juan Alessi, Epstein's Argentine butler, testified at Maxwell's trial.
I cleaned those rooms every day. I saw children's belongings. I saw unusual items. I knew what was happening wasn't right, but Mr. Epstein paid very well. He said if I stayed silent, I would have a job for life.
Pilots like Larry Vysotsky, who flew the Lolita Express, were also part of the conspiracy. They transported politicians, billionaires, and princes to the island of Sin, knowing full well the purpose of the trips, but being paid hundreds of thousands of dollars annually to turn a blind eye. But amid the darkness of silence and complicity, there were brave voices who dared to stand up against an entire criminal empire. And the first, strongest voice was Virginia Giuffre's. Drawn into Epstein's circle at 17 while working at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort, Virginia spent over 2 decades seeking justice not just for herself, but for countless others who endured the same nightmare.
There's a photo of me, Prince Andrew, and Ghislaine at the Manhattan townhouse. I was still a teenager when that picture was taken. The prince's hand rests on my waist, while Ghislaine stands beside us smiling. They call me a liar. They bring in teams of lawyers against me. But the photograph is there. It doesn't lie. I refuse to stay silent. I won't let what happened to me be repeated with others. The memories remain, whether they want to acknowledge them or not.
Virginia's allegations about Prince Andrew shook the British royal family and the entire world. Despite Prince Andrew's continued denials and claims he didn't remember meeting Virginia, he eventually paid a huge sum, rumored to be up to $12 million, to settle the lawsuit out of court. In Epstein's Black Book, there were thousands of contacts, including presidents, prime ministers, princes, and the world's most powerful billionaires. On March 11, 2005, a mother in Palm Beach called police to report that her underage daughter had been exploited by a wealthy local figure. This call initiated the largest investigation in Palm Beach history. The initial investigation led police to Jeffrey Epstein's El Brillo Way mansion, the first time this mysterious billionaire's name appeared in police files. What they discovered wasn't an isolated case, but a systematic criminal network with dozens of victims. Michael Reiter, former Palm Beach police chief, stated in an interview with Netflix Filthy Rich,
"We had a strong case. We had multiple victims, multiple pieces of physical evidence. This was clearly a systematic criminal organization."
The mansion search yielded hundreds of crucial pieces of evidence, including CDs containing contact information for hundreds of young girls, cameras and recording equipment, detailed massage schedules, and banking information about payments. The investigation progressed rapidly and evidence against Epstein became overwhelming. Police had testimonies from dozens of victims, physical evidence from the mansion search, and a clear criminal pattern. Everything pointed to one conclusion: Jeffrey Epstein would face multiple serious charges and a sentence of decades in prison. But Jeffrey Epstein wasn't an ordinary billionaire. When news of the investigation spread, the most formidable army of lawyers money could buy assembled to protect him. Alan Dershowitz, the famous Harvard law professor, who who had defended O.J. Simpson, Kenneth Starr, the former special prosecutor who had investigated President Bill Clinton, Roy Black, one of Miami's most expensive criminal defense attorneys, Gerald Lefcourt, an expert in organized crime cases, and dozens of other lawyers forming a legal force that few could stand against. But there was something stranger than the army of lawyers. When the case was transferred to federal level, Alexander Acosta, U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida, held secret meetings with Epstein's lawyers. Years later, in a Senate hearing in July 2019, when questioned about his role in the Epstein case, Alexander Acosta made a statement that would shock the entire nation.
I was told Epstein belonged to intelligence, meaning he was providing information to the federal government. This was before my time. I was told this matter was being handled at a level above me.
Belonged to intelligence, these three words explained everything. Jeffrey Epstein wasn't just an eccentric billionaire. He could have been an asset of the CIA, Mossad, or another intelligence agency, using sexual abuse activities to gather sensitive information about politicians, billionaires, and celebrities worldwide. In June 2008, the most infamous agreement in American legal history was signed, the Non-Prosecution Agreement, NPA, or Sweetheart Deal. Instead of facing dozens of federal child sex abuse charges, Jeffrey Epstein only had to plead guilty to 2 minor state charges: solicitation of prostitution and procuring a minor for prostitution. Julie K. Brown, the Miami Herald investigative reporter who exposed this case, commented, "This is one of the most lenient agreements I've ever seen. It not only protected Epstein, but also protected all his potential co-conspirators. In the most brutal betrayal, the victims, those who had bravely spoken up, were completely excluded from the negotiation process." Courtney Wild, one of the victims and later a government plaintiff, shared in court filings,
We weren't notified about the agreement. We weren't included in this process. We were treated as if we didn't exist.
On June 30th, 2008, Jeffrey Epstein entered Palm Beach County Jail to begin his 18-month sentence. But even serving time became a shameful farce. In reality, Epstein was allowed to leave jail 12 hours each day to work at his private office. He only slept in jail, spending days freely moving around, meeting clients, possibly even continuing criminal activities. Eventually, Epstein only actually served 13 months before being released for good behavior, a blatant mockery of justice. The Sweetheart Deal became a symbol of America's two-tier justice system: one tier for the rich and powerful, another for ordinary people. While Jeffrey Epstein enjoyed freedom from 2009 to 2019, dozens of his victims had to live with lifelong trauma, but they didn't give up. In November 2018, Miami Herald published the Perversion of Justice series, an investigation that could change history. Hundreds of interview hours, thousands of documents, and testimonies from over 80 victims. Julie had accomplished what the entire justice system couldn't: exposing the truth. This series didn't just tell Jeffrey Epstein's story. It exposed an entire corrupt system from top to bottom, from the federal prosecutor's office to the local sheriff. It showed how money and power could bend justice. And most importantly, it put names and faces to the victims who had been betrayed by the system. Alexander Acosta, who had signed the Sweetheart Deal years earlier, now Trump's Labor Secretary, became the target of fierce criticism. Acosta tries to defend himself.
The 2008 agreement was made based on information available at that time. We ensured that Epstein went to jail and was registered as a sex offender.
But public opinion didn't accept this defense, with dozens of victims now publicly speaking out. With the brutal details revealed in Brown's series, everyone understood that the Sweetheart Deal wasn't a misjudgment, but intentional cover-up. Finally, the pressure became too great. In July 2019, Alexander Acosta was forced to resign, And then, on the evening of July 6, 2019, Jeffrey Epstein stepped down from his private jet at Teterboro Airport, New Jersey, after a trip from Paris. He didn't know the FBI was waiting for him. At the 9-story Manhattan townhouse, one of the city's most luxurious mansions, federal agents opened safes and discovered a series of shocking evidence: a fake Austrian passport with Epstein's photo but false name, and Saudi Arabian citizenship with entry stamps from many countries. At Little St. James, the search revealed even more horrifying evidence. The FBI used helicopters to access this long, isolated island. The mysterious temple locals called the Devil's Temple had secret underground rooms built in secret. Electronic devices, hard drives, and computers were seized, showing this place had been closely monitored. In the main villa on the island, FBI discovered a control room with dozens of surveillance monitors capable of watching every corner of the island. At Zorro Ranch in New Mexico, Epstein's 33,000-acre ranch, FBI also found massage tables, cameras, testimonies showing many girls had been brought there under the guise of vacation. This ranch had once been advertised by Epstein as a breeding ground for his DNA, where he wanted 20 women to be pregnant simultaneously. But perhaps the most important discovery was on the Lolita Express. FBI had seized all flight records of this aircraft from 1997 to 2019. The flight logs listed names of numerous VIP guests: Bill Clinton, 26 flights; Prince Andrew, 10 flights; Alan Dershowitz, 6 flights; Kevin Spacey, 4 flights; Chris Tucker, 3 flights, and hundreds of other names. On July 8, 2019, Jeffrey Epstein appeared at Manhattan Federal Court to hear charges. This time, no sweetheart deal could save him. He faced charges of sex trafficking and conspiracy to traffic minors that could result in 45 years in prison. Epstein was transferred to Metropolitan Correctional Center, MCC Manhattan, one of America's highest security federal prisons. And most importantly, Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's closest accomplice, was still on the run. The trial of the century was about to begin. And this time, the truth could not be buried. Jeffrey Epstein, a man who once lived in the world's most luxurious lifestyle, faced harsh reality in a cramped cell at the Metropolitan Correctional Center, MCC. Once known as a facility housing the most dangerous criminals, MCC became hell for Epstein. In prison culture, child abusers are despised and frequently targeted for attacks, forcing him to be held in protective isolation. However, even in solitary confinement, Epstein still tried to fight. He hired the best legal team and offered to pay hundreds of millions of dollars for bail, but Judge Richard Berman firmly refused. On August 10, 2019, a horrific event occurred. Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in his cell by hanging. His death immediately became a media storm with countless suspicions. Strange details emerged one after another. 2 guards fell asleep and falsified reports. The camera system had technical malfunctions, and his cellmate was transferred just 1 day before. Public opinion boiled over, and the phrase "Epstein didn't kill himself" became a global phenomenon, reflecting the public's deep skepticism toward the official version. Although the Department of Justice's final report, released in 2023, concluded it was suicide due to a series of failures in prison management, many still believe in a larger conspiracy. Will the secrets in his black book ever be fully exposed? And most importantly, will the victims ever receive the justice they deserve? If Jeffrey Epstein was the mastermind, then Ghislaine Maxwell was the dark hand that helped him turn nightmares into reality. In New York, Maxwell met Jeffrey Epstein and immediately recognized the opportunity. Maxwell became the CEO of this human trafficking enterprise. When Epstein was arrested in 2019, Maxwell disappeared and became a fugitive. The FBI hunted her for a year before capturing her in New Hampshire in July 2020. The historic trial took place at the end 2021, where brave victims testified. Virginia Giuffre, Jane, Carolyn, and Kate from England all accused Maxwell of direct involvement in turning children into sex slaves. On December 29, 2021, Maxwell was convicted on 5 of 6 charges, including sex trafficking of minors. She was sentenced to 20 years in prison, enough to die bars. The 2023 appeal upheld the sentence. After Ghislaine Maxwell's sentencing, when public opinion thought the Jeffrey Epstein nightmare was somewhat closed, the world was once again reminded of the true scale of this scandal. In 2024, previously sealed files were suddenly made public, triggering a new tsunami wave in global public opinion. International media immediately flooded with sensational headlines. Epstein files were suddenly made public. Major banks that once processed his money flow faced waves of lawsuits from victims and authorities. Deutsche Bank, where Epstein was once a client, was accused of turning a blind eye to suspicious transactions. In 2023, the bank agreed to settle $75 million for the victim group. JP Morgan Chase, America's largest bank, was sued with similar accusations. Records showed that JP Morgan not only maintained accounts for Epstein, but also processed transactions related to the recruitment network. In 2023, JP Morgan had to accept a massive settlement, $290 million for victims, plus $75 million for the U.S. Virgin Islands government. Additionally, Epstein's estate itself, assets left after his death, was also forced to pay. At the end of 2022, the estate agreed to transfer over $100 million to USVI authorities, closing a lawsuit related to illegal activities on Little St. James private island. One side, cold concrete blocks representing financial power; the other side, haunting memories representing stolen childhoods. This contrast shows that Epstein's crimes weren't just individual crimes, but stains on an entire system. Declassified files, compensation payments, civil settlements, all like hammer blows, gradually breaking down the wall of silence surrounding the Epstein network. Jeffrey Epstein is dead, Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison. But even when all of that has happened, the echoes of this case have never settled. In August 2025, the U.S. House of Representatives issued subpoenas demanding documents from the Epstein estate. From contact black books, flight logs, to financial records, the public hopes these documents might reveal part of the power network still hidden, but the truth remains controlled to this day. And then, as the screen gradually darkens, only one cold question remains. Was Jeffrey Epstein's death the end? Or just the beginning of a larger mystery the world has never dared to face? Comment below the video. If this story was helpful, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share with those who need to know.